I have about a minute after 1 o'clock. I think I'll get us started today. So this is Ed Crow. Thanks for coming on today. Appreciate it. We can talk about high deductible plan G today. It's a little bit about F. We're going to mention it in a few scenarios, but mostly talk about G. And a couple things before we get started. For those who haven't done a webinar with me before, we do record these webinars, and we will send the recording out to everybody that registers. So we tend to do these webinars, not tend to, we do them every once in a while we'll miss a Wednesday or Thursday, but usually Wednesday and Thursday at 1 on various topics regarding Medicare, sometimes other things, care, or lead strategies, different selling systems, that kind of thing. But usually it's a Medicare related topic. So anyhow, so if you register for any future webinars, you will get the recording, so you don't have to attend. So if you have a future webinar you want to watch, but you can't make it at that time, just register and you will get a copy of the recording. Other thing I wanted to mention is if you have questions, you can send them into the webinar, into the question section, and feel free to send them in during the webinar. I'll answer them at the end. But what has a tendency to happen is we'll get done and then people will think of a question and ask it at the end, and I don't know, sometimes we'll end it before they can get their question in. So if you got questions, just shoot them in at any time, and I will try to answer them for you. Hopefully I can answer them anyway. And hopefully I can answer, and then on top of that, give you a right answer, which would be ideal. So I guess with that, we'll get started. So our agenda for today, and again, for those who are joining now, this webinar is recorded, and we will, it'll only run 15 or 20 minutes. So our agenda is we're going to talk about high deductible plan G, talk a little bit about high deductible plan F. You still can sell that, believe it or not, to certain people. Talk about we have an accelerated compensation contract for plan F and G. You'll see why that's important in a bit. And then at the very end, I'm just going to mention our lead program, Connector, Sunfire, my Medicare bot, some of the other stuff things that we offer. And for those joining, if you have questions, just send them into the question section, and I will answer them or try to answer them for you at the end. Okay, so high deductible G, just a little history. It started as of 1/1/2020. It really, for those who are familiar with high deductible plan F, it works almost identically to high deductible F in the same manner. So basically the way it works is there's the deductible. The deductible is set every year. It's the same. So anybody offering a high deductible plan G or F, the deductible is the same for all companies. So it's a standardized deductible, and it is reset up every year. So it's going to be $24.90 for 2022. That'll be the amount. And a quick thing is, people, I think a lot of times, mistake the $24.90 out-of-pocket max on the high deductible G or F is an actual deductible, and it really isn't. Because I think of a true deductible as something where the first $2,490 of care goes towards that deductible, and you're just pure out of pocket for that expense. But that's not how it works with the high deductible G or F. The $24.90 is really an out-of-pocket max because when you're on a supplement, Medicare covers what they cover. So Medicare is going to cover, for example, on Part B, they're 80% after you pay your Part B deductible. And the insured's going to pay the 20%, and it's that 20% that goes towards the $24.90. So just long story short, if you go to a doctor and they usually charge $200, well, Medicare is going to negotiate that down on a primary to like $80, sometimes a little lower even. Medicare is going to cover 80% of that, and the 20 left over, which is hardly anything, that's what the client will pay, and that's what will go towards that $24.90 out-of-pocket max. And remember, all this pricing is always negotiated because Medicare is primary with the supplement. So it's all going to be negotiated pricing. Medicare is going to cover their portion, and then what's left over out of the client's pocket is what's going to accumulate towards that $24.90 every year. So I mentioned earlier that plan high deductible G and high deductible F are essentially the same, and they are. I mean, they're almost exactly the same. The only difference is on a high deductible F, it is a true $24.90 because everything's covered on F. So once you've spent $24.90, you're covered in full. With G, you got to factor in the Part B deductible, because as a lot of you probably remember, when they made the changes for 1/1/2020, they said going forward Medicare plans can't cover in full, meaning they can't cover the Part B deductible. That's why F was grandfathered. So high deductible G is a $24.90 out-of-pocket max, but you've got that $233 deductible for Part B, which doesn't count towards the $24.90, so it's actually a little more. So basically, on high deductible G, the person pays for Part B services, the Part B deductible $233. Then after that, they're accumulating towards the $24.90. When it comes to high G versus high F, the pricing is usually almost identical from company to company between the G and the F. I mean, companies will have vastly different pricing between what they're charging from one company to another. But for example, like United American, I bring them up a lot. In pretty much every state, their high deductible F price is the same as their high deductible G price. I bring up United American because we have a contract with a number of companies that offer high G and high F, but United American tends to have the lowest rates in pretty much every state. And the rates will range on high F and G from as low as $23 a month in underwritten states to as much as $80 a month in just the most expensive places. For example, here in Connecticut, it's $50. Some parts of New York, it's $60. It depends on where you are. But you go down to North Carolina and it's $23 a month. So, but regardless, when it comes to competitiveness on high G and high F, United American is almost always the lowest cost plan in any given state. I kind of talked over this slide a little bit before, but I just want to reiterate the point. So, with the Part B and Part B coinsurance that goes towards that $24.90 on a high deductible G, it doesn't add up to much. So keep in mind, doctors are only allowed to charge Medicare allowable amounts. So on a primary visit, Medicare only allows about $80, regardless of what they bill. On a specialist, $100 is being generous. It's usually a little less than that. And the client, as Part B says, covers 80%, and so the client will only pay $20. So that's all that's going towards their out-of-pocket, because that's all they're spending out of their pocket. Put this to another example, and this number is probably a little low, but MRIs, depending on the type of MRI and the degree of it, Medicare only allows, that might be billed at $2,000. Medicare only allows about $480 for that, $480 to $520, depending. But, and the client only pays 20% of what's allowed. So it really doesn't add up to a lot when you're talking about out-of-pocket on a high deductible G or F plan. Again, I already wrote this, but the Part B deductible for 2022 is $233. So when it comes to a high G or high F, the Part B doesn't accumulate much out of their pocket. I mean, it's so negotiated and they're only paying 20%, so they really just don't see big numbers out of their pocket. The biggest hit on the high deductible G plan is the hospital deductible. So the inpatient deductible for 2022 is $1,556. And if they go inpatient in the hospital, they're going to take a $1,556 hit. They're going to have to pay that, and that's going to go towards their $24.90 out of pocket. One thing on original Medicare to note that is different than an Advantage plan, however, is there is a 60-day benefit period. So if somebody goes in the hospital, they'll pay their $1,556. If they come out and go back in a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, they don't pay another $1,556. They've got a 60-day grace period where that deductible wouldn't reoccur. If they go in the hospital, pay the deductible, and then come out and go back in, 2.5 months later, then they'll have a new $1,556. But that is really what will get somebody towards their out-of-pocket max on a high deductible G plan. If you've got a client that creates a cash flow problem there is likely a good opportunity there for a hospital indemnity plan. A lot of people don't think of selling hospital indemnity with a supplement, but when you're working with a high deductible F or G, it can make sense. Now, if you have a client that doesn't care, if they're like, I can handle $2,490, no problem, then it might be a tougher angle. But If somebody is concerned about that 1556 and the cash flow problem it creates, you can tell them for 30 to 45 bucks a month, you could give them a GTL hospital indemnity plan and help with that situation. So it could be an opportunity for another sale there. And just remember, people will talk about huge claims and high utilization. I hear this all the time. They'll say, well, I'm going to go with a regular G or F. I'm just too nervous on a high deductible G or F. But keep in mind, $2,490 is the max. So after that, they're covered in full. It turns that high deductible G turns into a plan G. So they perceive risk, but it's a very defined thing and a very calculated thing. So they hit the $2,490. They don't really, the risk goes away at that point. They're no better or worse off than if they're on a plan G. Then I guess you could say they're better off because they're not, still paying that huge monthly premium. So who can still buy the high F plan? So I wrote high F and G. Actually, it's I guess it does apply to both, but for high F specifically, and for plan F for that matter, if you wanted to know. It's regularly thought that nobody can get F or high F anymore. They can. Anybody who is eligible for Medicare prior to 1/1/2020 can still buy a high F or plan F for that matter. So anybody that became eligible for Medicare after 1/1/2020, they can only buy high G. They can't buy high F or F any longer. And it's eligible is the key word. So if you had somebody that was eligible for Medicare in 2019 at some point, but they never took Part B, it doesn't matter. They were eligible. So they can still buy a high deductible F or a plan F. So those who are eligible for, okay, I already said it on my slide. And as I mentioned before, United American on high F and high G, they usually have the lowest rates. So why would it make sense for somebody to switch, for example, from a plan F or G and go into a high G plan? A lot of times the math dictates it, that it makes a lot of sense, especially in guaranteed issue states. So your guaranteed issue states, all-time guaranteed issue states are New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Maine. And if we use New York as an example, plan F, and this number is actually low now, but plan F is very expensive in parts of New York. So if you have plan F that is $306 a month, yeah, they don't have any out of pocket, but they're paying $306 a month no matter what. Versus if you went with a high deductible F for this person, or a G for that matter, the math would be just slightly different. But if you went with a high deductible F or G, they're only paying $69 a month. So if you look at the math in that scenario, you take plan F, regular plan F, you're paying $306 a month times 12 months. No matter what, they're paying $36.72. Well, if that same person took a high F, they're paying the $69 a month, so that's $828. Even if they max their deductible out, even if they max out the $2,490, that only totals up to $33.18. They still come out $300 better, and that's if they max the plan out. And what we'll talk about in a minute is the fact that people rarely hit the $2,490 on a high deductible F or G, hardly ever. So we'll talk about that in a second. But so if they don't hit that deductible, that's pure savings. But even if they do, they're still saving money. Now, the example is extreme here that I used in New York. But in a lot of states, even if they max out a high deductible G, for example, yeah, they might come out $100, $200, $300 worse than had they been on a plan F. But the reality is, or a plan G, a regular plan G, but the reality is they're rarely going to hit that $2,490. So they're almost always going to see savings on a high deductible G or F plan. So here's the key when we talk about that. How much do people actually spend out of pocket, towards their out of pocket max on a high F or G? Well, if you look at the averages, on average, a person age 65 to 71 pays about $800. So out of that $2,490, they spend about $800 towards it. So if you think about the math we just did, by the averages, these people are going to save a lot of money. And they might say to you, yeah, but what if I have a bad year? Well, again, given the example I gave, if they have a bad year, If they're in New York, they're going to still come out better. If they're in some other states, they might come out slightly worse, but I think the risk reward there makes a lot of sense. People ages 71 to 76 spend on average about $900 on Medicare A and B cost share, so $900 towards that $24.90 out of pocket max. So the number is 5%. So people with a high deductible F or G, about 5% of them will actually hit the $24.90. So that means 95% of your clients are going to be saving money. How much depends on how much they spend, but they're not going to be maxing their plan out. What's nice about high deductible F and G is it's an easy sale. It's easy in any state. It's certainly easiest in a GI state. In a guaranteed issue state, there's no underwriting anytime. I mean, Connecticut's a prime example of this. So you could go to somebody in Connecticut with a plan F or G, explain how high deductible, well, let's say they have a G, because let's say they were Medicare eligible on 1/1/2020 or later. So we'll use G. You can go to somebody in Connecticut with a plan G, and you can say to them, look, here's how high deductible G works, and explain to them that there's very little risk for them, and there's a lot of upside. Because odds are they're going to save quite a bit of money. And because there's no underwriting in Connecticut, you could say to them, let's try it out. For example, if they're in Plan G, let's try it out. If you don't like it, we can switch you back. We're in a guaranteed issue state. So what's nice about that scenario is you kind of win both ways. They'll try the high deductible G. Odds are they will save a lot of money and be very happy with you. But worst case scenario, if they have a really bad year and max the plan out or just don't like the concept of it, maybe, it just doesn't work for whatever reason, you could always move them back to their Plan G. And then you'd be the agent on the new plan when you rewrite it. So either way, they'll be happy, you'll be happy. It works very well. The concept works very well in underwritten states as well, but you just don't have that. It takes away, in some instances, the ability to say to them, well, we'll just move you back to your old plan if you don't like it. If you're in an underwritten state, their health takes a turn for the worse, you might not be able to get them back into the old plan. But again, given the out-of-pocket max, how much risk are they actually taking? I do see some questions coming in. I will definitely answer those for you when we get done here. So the only flaw with this, with a high F or high G, is that the concept is easy. You can sell the plan. If clients understand it, they will usually go with it because they see the math and how it works and it makes sense to them. The only flaw with this is the commission, and I think that's probably why you don't see just way more high deductible F and G sales. If it was really, I think if commission was equal, you'd probably see a lot more sales and also if clients could understood how it works, the math just makes sense. I think you'd see it sold a lot. But we have to make a living, of course, and the flaw with it is, let's say you're at a 16% commission, well, the premium's very low. So if you're in an area where the premium on a high deductible F or G is $53 a month, 16%, it just quite frankly doesn't add up to a lot. So, 16% of $53 is $8 a month. Even with a 9-month advance, you're, about $80 for commission. So with United American specifically, we have a contract that helps with that. We have an accelerated contract, our lowest level of that, the street level, so we can go up from there. But the street level on that, it's not an advance. It just pays a higher percentage of the commission in the first year. So it basically pays 392% commission on the first 4 months of premium. So if you, again, use Connecticut for an example, on that high deductible G sale, on a plan that was $53 a month, let's say, instead of getting $80 for the first year on the accelerated commission schedule, you wind up getting $237 in the first year because they just front load the commission so much. Now you're still going to get renewals. Your renewals are reduced for 3 years to make up for it, but it helps with cash flow and gives you a much larger payment up front for a high deductible G or F sale. Interesting thing, we don't see it a lot. There aren't a ton of places where United American is very competitive on their regular plan F, G, or N. their spot really is the high deductible F and G, but there are a few states where they are. And when they are, the accelerated comp schedule pays a lot of commission, for lack of a better way to put it. So, somebody sells a plan G for $160 a month on the accelerated comp schedule, because it applies to all the plans the UA has. You're looking at $531 in comp for the first 4 months on a $160 plan G sale. And the plan will still pay lifetime renewals of 17%. So you're looking at substantial compensation there. But again, it's only a select amount of states where they're competitive on regular plans FG or N. So in my opinion, the accelerated comp schedule makes it a little more worthwhile to sell a high F or a high G plan. And again, as we talked about, you're helping the people when you sell it. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've run into somebody who has in New York who has a plan G or an F, and they're going to the doctor like 8 times a year. And, I'll try to have that conversation with them about high deductible G or F, and usually it will work, and they'll understand how it works and why it makes sense for them to do it. Once in a while, you'll get a client who just can't wrap their mind around it, and that's okay too. But in most cases, it makes sense, and I think this, the accelerated comp schedule makes that more worth your while, is what I would say. That accelerated comp schedule is available in every state except for New York. So sorry to say that. It's not approved in New York. It is approved everywhere else. So in New York, with United American, it'd be standard commission. Their streets, I think, 17%. So, they've got some higher levels, but you'd be looking at just a straight up 17% with a 9-month advance sale in New York. But all the other states, the accelerated's available. I'm not going to talk through this slide, but just quick reminder. Everybody that works with us, you have access to our lead program. It's 100% reimbursement for your first 6 months, 100% per month, up to $500 a month. After that, it doesn't end. A lot of people think it ends after 6 months. It doesn't. It's a 50% reimbursement, still up to $500 paid to you. And you can use it towards anything. It could be towards a dialer, telemarketer cost, seminar cost, Facebook leads, cost for a seminar. Anything you do to generate Medicare sales would be eligible for our lead program. And it can be any company too. I mean, if it's a way outside of the box idea and you got to kind of connect the dots to understand how it's going to lead to selling Medicare plans, that's something you want to talk to me about. But if it's, again, a seminar, leads, advertising with any company, it's easy. You simply send us a paid receipt and we reimburse you. One question that comes often is, because our one rule is, if you're going to use our lead program, your active Medicare carriers have to be with us. There is no reduction in comp or anything like that, but that's the one rule. You've got to have your active Medicare carriers with us. And people will say, well, what if I can't move them all over? At once? Is the clock rolling on my 100% for 6 months from day one? No. We don't roll the clock. We don't start your 100% for 6 months until you take your first reimbursement. So, if it takes you 8 months to move all your Medicare contracts over, that's fine, because you're not going to lose your 6 months at 100% because it doesn't start until you take your first reimbursement. For those who haven't used Connect for Medicare, you've got Connect for Medicare, which is actually Connecture, and you've got Sunfire. I strongly suggest trying them out. We provide them at no cost. They operate as a CRM. You can enroll people through text or email with both systems, compare plans, save doctors and drug lists, just like the CMS site, except for this is a CRM. It's specific to you. And when people enroll through this plan, if you send them a link to enroll in a plan by email or text, you get credit for the sale. Both sites also have consumer-facing sites, so this comes up a lot too. So if you have access to Connecture or Sunfire with us, and again, it doesn't cost you anything to get it, you just need a username and password, you have a consumer-facing website for both of them. Basically a URL that is coded to you, that is approved, that a consumer can use and do all the same things that you could do on those sites. If you haven't tried it, definitely suggest you do. The URL is nice because it's basically a free, approved quote and enrollment engine you can put on your website, your email, or just email it out to people however you'd like to use it. My Medicare bot is a little newer. It's very similar to Connector, and Sunfire does all the same things. The only caveat or difference is instead of needing to send the scope and the enrollment link via email or text like you do on Connector and Sunfire, you can do pure voice signature with my Medicare bot. Last thing I'll mention, and then I'll wrap up, is we've been using our T65 Medicare seminar program. It's a company we use that agents have access to, and they will book seminars for you. You got to find the venue. So you need the location. They're not done on an educational format. And they consistently have been putting 40 to 60 T65s in the seats for seminars. Sometimes the numbers are higher. We've had them as high as over 100 people attending, but they do all the work. They plan out where the mailers have to go, where the Facebook ads have to go. They have a really good RSVP site that the people reserve on. And agents, by the way, have access to that, so you can see for your seminar, you have access, you can see everybody who RSVP'd and all their contact information, which is really nice. We've tried that out in a number of states. It has worked very well. I'd be happy to talk to you about that program as well. That's it. Let's see if we have any questions. And remember, those who came on late, we will send a recording of this webinar out to everyone. Let's see if we got questions here. Okay, question is, how would infusions or durable medical be treated with high deductible plans? Exactly the same way as any other supplement. So when you have infusions or durable medical equipment, remember, Medicare is primary. So it's the same rules as if you had a plan F or G. Medicare covers their portion. What's left over goes towards the supplement and whatever the benefits of the supplement are. So in the case of DME, that's an 80%. I think off the top of my head, Medicare is an 80% coverage. That wouldn't change. So it'd be a 20% cost share. And infusions depends. That can be a big advantage for supplements. An infusion, if it's a Part B as in boy drug, which it usually is, that's going to go through the medical benefit. And Medicare is going to cover 80% of that. 20% would go towards if you're on a high G, for example, 20% would go towards the $24.90 out-of-pocket max. If it was an infusion that was D, which would be rare, but if it was, it would go on the Part D plan. Yeah, somebody mentioned that on infusions you can get much higher out-of-pocket. Yes, I agree. But again, on a high deductible G plan, I mean, $24.90 is your max. So, I mean, if you think about it, if you get infusions on an Advantage plan, you're gonna probably over time hit your Advantage plan out-of-pocket max. Or, if you get infusions on a regular plan F or G, I mean, that's fine. They'll be covered, but you have your monthly premium. So even if you max out your high deductible G, you're not going to be much worse off, or sometimes not worse off at all. How is hospice handled on high deductible plans and Med Advantage plans? Hospice is weird. It's almost like when you're on an Advantage. Well, we'll start with Medicare, I guess, original Medicare and a supplement, and then go to Advantage next. When an original Medicare and a supplement, hospice is covered. So it wouldn't incur cost towards the high deductible plan. So, for example, I always thought when somebody's on a plan F and they had hospice, that it was covered, but because of the F, but it's not. Medicare covers it. And I don't really understand the dynamics behind it completely, but on a Medicare Advantage, it's almost like even though they have an Advantage that is primary, it's almost like they're reverting back to an original Medicare benefit when they need hospice. Hopefully that answered that question. Okay, somebody said I need a website from scratch. Can you guys help or refer me? Can you guys help or refer me to a trustworthy source to get that done? So a couple things there. Yes, we have sources. If you want to build your own website that's really specific, tailored to you, you want to put a blog on there, maybe do some SEO with your long-tailed keyword searches with your blog, I can recommend a few. We are just rolling out right now. We'll have ready in about a month or so. We are going to make have a basic function where we make a basic free website for agents. You send us some information, and it's kind of boilerplated, and we'll make you a site. We'll put your Pearl right in the site for you. So we can do that. Or again, if you want your own site, we can recommend some places. Last comment was, I think original Medicare primary on Med Advantage for hospice. Yes, I agree. And I don't understand the exact mechanics behind that, but that does seem to be what happens. Okay, hopefully I answered your questions for you. It looks like that's all we have. I appreciate everybody coming on today. Tomorrow, we have another webinar at 1 o'clock. So hopefully get some people to join that. You will get a copy of this recording, and I appreciate you coming out today and to the webinar, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you.